Black Lives Matter activist DeRay Mckesson's appeal was dismissed by the Supreme Court. If you don't know DeRay, you may know him from his blue vest, his presence on social media, his visibility, hyper visibility during the Ferguson uprisings. He is a prominent person. You know, I said Black Lives Matter activist. I should say, I think it would be more appropriate to say maybe Movement for Black Lives activist. He's certainly an activist who fights for Black lives, but he is not a member of BLM and never was a member of BLM to my knowledge. So I want to make sure I represent DeRay properly. But he led a protest in Baton Rouge back in 2016 following the killing of Alton Sterling by police. And during that protest, an unidentified person threw a rock at a police officer, causing the injured officer to file a lawsuit against Kckesson. Now, DeRay Mckesson and the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, argued that his actions leading the protest are protected under the First Amendment. Again, he's basically saying, Mr. Officer, you got hit with a rock at a protest that I'm in, and maybe even that I led, but that doesn't mean that suddenly you can sue me because I have a First Amendment right to be here. It's not like I was committing a crime. The court refused to hear the case. However, Justice Sonia Sotomayor explained the reason being that a recent ruling with similar issues may work in Mckesson's favor. Mckesson's lawyers expected to win in the lower courts. I am shocked that they didn't win in the lower courts. I think the idea that DeRay is being dragged through the courts because someone got hit during a protest. Now, if he led a march and said, let's go hit some officers, that'd be different. If he led a march that created a reasonable expectation of unsafety that was foreseeable and preventable, then sure. But y'all up here acting as if he did this. It's fascinating, man. Alton Sterling got killed by the police, and we've still never had a real conversation about making his family whole. We've never had a real conversation about police violence in Louisiana. But we got room to have smoke for DeRay. The officer says that DeRay was negligent under Louisiana law by failing to foresee that the protest could lead to violence. The lawsuit says the officer lost teeth and suffered a brain injury. First of all, I don't know if the officer's telling the truth or not, but I find that people who have these dramatic and extravagant claims about injuries, they be exaggerating. At least the police, they be lying. But let's say the guy did lose a tooth or teeth. I mean, that's a lot. And suffered a brain. I mean, it's an awful thing. I hope that did not happen to the officer. I hope the officer has no long-term physical damage. I don't want that for anybody. But if he does, how the hell is DeRay supposed to foresee that? Unless you just make the case that, well, all protests could have violence. All protests could have violent resistance and interactions with the police that are less than warm and fuzzy. Does that mean that anybody who organizes a protest is now liable? That seems unfair. That seems unreasonable. But that's sort of the point. They want to make it so that people are afraid to assemble. They want to make it so that people are afraid to come together. That's the whole point. And I wish I could say that it's an ineffective strategy, but it's not. It's not. People do it because it works. The state is increasingly cracking down on radical forms of resistance, on public demonstrations against the state. They're basically trying to go back to a McCarthy era. That's why Jody Dean was, suspended at Hobart William Smith colleges. That's why this young woman, who was the valedictorian, Esna Tebessem, that suddenly now she can't even get a job. I mean, she can't even get on the stage and give a speech. It's because there's a new McCarthyism out there. And yeah, the right acts like they're the victims of cancel culture and they can't be heard and they're being silenced and blah, 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 blah. But the truth is, that's not what's happening. There's far more of a crackdown on the left than on the right now. And I'm not trying to have an oppression derby here. I'm not trying to have a fight over who's got it worse. But what I do have to say is all these cancel culture people ain't said nothing about Palestine. They complained about all the cancel culture in the university. They wrote letters. They did all this stuff. They ain't saying nothing about Palestine. All the people that love tiki torches and screaming racist slogans in Charlottesville, they ain't got nothing to say about DeRay Mckesson right now. They're not saying, well, we need to fight for DeRay's right to say it like they do. But when the racist says something, they always say, well, he might have said something I don't agree with, but the racist has the right to say racist things. Well, why didn't DeRay have a right to organize a march? DeRay didn't say anything violent. He didn't say anything that caused violence. He simply organized a protest where there were racist people. I see some of y'all saying stuff about DeRay in the comments. That's between y'all and DeRay. Whether you like DeRay or don't like DeRay, it shouldn't be the point. Even if you don't like the brother, you want him to be liable for organizing a protest. Even if you take your own, and we get too all involved in the personalities and the pettiness and the ego of this, man. Forget all that. Forget all that. Whether you like him, love him, hate him, whatever. This is wrong. And we can't allow these precedents to happen. We got to do better, y'all.